If you have experienced drag in your business, it's a signal, not a sentence. So what it means is that you need to take a closer look. It means that it needs more attention from you in a special way. Good morning. Welcome to the Coaches Plaza training. It is on a Monday and I'm here on time. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself. If you can see me and hear me, let me know in the chat. Say hello. Don't be a stranger. And let's unpack what we're going to talk about today. So I'm coming to you live from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan for my holiday trip. And today we're going to be talking actually about growth, and we're going to talk about growth from kind of a opposite kind of perspective, which is drag. So when you have a lot of growth, that's a good thing, right? Like you could be growing the number of people that you're serving. You could be growing the impact that you're having. You could be growing your bank account. You could be growing in all kinds of lovely ways. So today we're going to talk about what are the big obstacles to growth. We're going to talk about stopping the drag. We're going to talk about 5 fixes that can make growth actually feel a lot easier. So today's live is informed by a lot of high performance coaching with a lot of incredible entrepreneurs. And we're going to talk about some of the things that cause the most drag. And, the thing is, your business shouldn't feel like it's heavy. It shouldn't be heavy all the time. Now, there's going to be challenging seasons and challenging moments. There's going to be, yes, I am in Canada. I'm like bundled up. But there's going to be seasons where your growth is going to come from either inside, like you're going to decide that you want to make a change, or it's going to come from outside. And I've been in business long enough to tell you that both have a pretty significant impact on your growth overall, both the outside impacts and the inside impacts. So today we're going to talk about these 5 fixes that are going to help you when your business starts to drag. Now, here's the thing. If you have experienced drag in your business, it's a signal, not a sentence. So what it means is that you need to take a closer look. It means that it needs more attention from you in a special way. So in this episode, you're going to learn 5 easy fixes that are going to clear friction, restore your flow, and make your success feel light again. And a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to, they want to go back to the very beginning when they launched the thing, when they felt full of faith and ready to go and explore. And the truth is that if you've been on the journey for a little while, that drag is kind of a rite of passage. It happens for all of us. So today I'm going to talk through how do you tell the difference between a healthy challenge and unhealthy drag. So we're going to actually make that distinction today. I'm going to talk about the 5 most common sources of business friction that are probably slowing you down. We're going to talk about why ignoring small inefficiencies tend to cost more than just fixing it. And we're going to use a tool that I call the ease index to decide where we're going to simplify next. And we're going to learn why activating your flow and finding more ease in your business is not laziness. It's something called leverage. And leverage is a very good thing in business, okay? So here we go. Let's pop into it. So when you are building a business, there's no question there's going to be challenge. Like, no question at all. For sure, there's going to be challenge. And for each of us, we have different challenges. And I'd love for you to just take a moment with your notes and reflect on like what has represented some challenge for you in 2025. Maybe it was the courage to try a new offer. Maybe it was to finally get great at selling. Maybe it was to automate your marketing. Maybe it was to put yourself onto stages and platforms that are actually going to promote what it is that you do. I don't know. You tell me. You can share in the chat, like, what was a challenge that you experienced in 2025? So let's talk about the difference between a healthy challenge and unhealthy drag. And as a coach, I'm always listening for this unhealthy drag. And I'm going to give you some examples here to really drive this home. So If it's a healthy challenge, what you're going to notice is that it activates your focus. Okay. So think of it kind of like you've got a puzzle and you need to solve the puzzle. And so then you just like focus in on the puzzle. Now, I'm visiting my family here in Canada. We love puzzles. So I've been like working on a puzzle with my brother on the floor, and it's been so fun. But it activates like this focus, this clarity. Like I'm looking for a piece that has this particular shape, or I'm looking for a piece that has this particular color on it because I am committed to solving this puzzle. So that is a sign that you are probably facing healthy challenge. Now, unhealthy drag, you'll notice that it actually diffuses your focus. Okay, so healthy challenge, dial it in, focus. Unhealthy drag, I can't focus to save my life. So it creates like an avoidance, right? Because you're not engaged with solving the problem. Rather, you're engaged with things that are going to take you out of the problem solving mode. So think of it like challenge sharpens your attention, but drag makes you procrastinate, dread, or even numb out. And so that's one distinction. Another big distinction that when I'm looking and I'm coaching people and I'm looking at telling the difference, like, are they in a moment of healthy challenge or are they in unhealthy drag? Well, a challenge has a really clear payoff, right? So take, for example, I want to get really good at marketing this year. I really want to nail my message this year. Amazing, right? That gives you so much. When you have a clear payoff, then you can see a win, right? You can see a win. And that's what happens when you have healthy challenge. When you have unhealthy drag, it tends to feel like there's no finish line. It tends to seem like it's just going to go on and on forever and ever, and there's no end in sight, and there's no payoff, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So shout out why in the chat if you're tracking the difference between challenge and drag. I'm going to give you another example. Challenge tends to energize you, especially after you take action. So sometimes when you are activating a healthy challenge, it's actually really hard, right? Like it requires a lot of thinking. It requires design, decision making. Maybe you have to do math. Who wants to do that? But the thing is like you're going to engage the problem. You're going to engage the challenge. But then your energy after you engage the challenge, because you're making meaningful progress, goes up, right? So that's how you know you're doing healthy challenge. If you're in an unsustainable, drag sort of a pattern, it's going to just feel like it's draining you even before you even start, right? So healthy challenge is sometimes like quite hard. It's quite difficult, but that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong because it's got some challenge or difficulty in it. So long as there's payoff and progress. If there's payoff and progress, and it doesn't have to be payoff and progress every single time. So I'll give you a perfect example from a coaching business. If you're having a lot of consults, you're making progress by filling your calendar with more consults than you had before. It's going to probably take you some attempts, some practice to get to this place where you are closing a lot of those consults into becoming clients. And that's because it takes some practice, some confidence, some finesse for those sales calls to go really, really well. And so you can lose sales calls and still be in a healthy challenge because you're learning from each of those calls that makes the likelihood of you closing go up every single time. So drag, on the other hand, it drains you before you even start, right? Like you're just totally exhausted by the very idea, much less actually making effort against the idea. Unhealthy drag. Okay, another example. Challenge tends to grow your capacity, okay? Whereas drag tends to shrink your capacity. So if something keeps making you feel like it's making you smaller and smaller and smaller, then it's not really growth work anymore, right? You're really kind of battling this drag feeling. And then finally, challenge is going to be something that's probably very seasonal, very cyclical, right? There's going to be times when you're really activating into challenge, and then there's going to be times when you're not, in a hardcore grind. Whereas if you're in an unhealthy drag, it's going to feel like it's this constant obstacle. Okay. And if it's been hard for like months and months, that's not grit. That's like straight up friction. And I'll be honest with you, for my own journey, I have a high tolerance for pain. I'm curious if you feel the same way. Would you say you have a high, medium, or low tolerance for pain? So I have a pretty high tolerance for pain. So something I have to watch for personally is getting stuck in a drag pattern and not necessarily being activated into challenge to move out of the drag pattern. And some of it is because of the high tolerance for pain. Some of it is just I'm straight up stubborn, right? And I got to tell you, sometimes stubbornness is amazing in entrepreneurship, because when people would have quit like a long time ago, I'm still there. I'm stubborn. I'm going to keep on doing the thing. But if you're stubborn to the point where you're not receiving input, you're not letting the data tell you what the data is trying to tell you for like an overly long time, and you don't ask for help, that's the big signal. You're not asking for help. You're just suffering through it. Then watch out, right? You want to shift that and pivot that into a healthier challenge, right? So let's talk about like, where do business owners typically experience this challenge and business friction in the first place? And we're going to just like talk about how do you actually fix them. So yeah, way to go, Debbie. Good for you. Way to go, man. That's insane. Great. In a great way, because I know you've been thinking about that for a long time. So good for you. Congratulations on that big move. Okay, so let's talk about the first form of friction in your business, how to fix it. So number one, and oh my God, write this down. Shout out notes in the chat if you're writing down your notes for this week's training, because this is like, you're going to want to notice these. Number one, decision friction. My word. Okay, when I'm working with clients, the number one habit that I'm helping them to develop is a decision-making habit. So what happens with decision friction is you find yourself with so many choices and you don't have any default ways that you just look at things. So typically when people are really struggling with this, they have not formed a personal philosophy. So what is a personal philosophy? A personal philosophy is like, what are the sets of values and beliefs and standards that you are going to uphold that make decisions so easy for you, right? Because like, if you have a really strong personal philosophy, I've worked for years to really develop my personal philosophy around things. It's like you've decided in advance how you want to engage the world, how you want to engage in certain conversations, and what you want to do. Because the bigger you get, the more successful you get, the more people are going to ask of you, and they're going to think, oh, it's no big deal. But the thing is that the more successful you are, the more people are asking something of you. And so if you don't have a personal philosophy to kind of help you navigate all of those opportunities, then you're going to look at every opportunity with equal weight. And that's where overwhelm gets triggered, right? Shout out 1 in the chat if you hear what I'm saying loud and clear. If you are constantly trying to decide, do I want to work private or do I want to have a group program? Do I want to charge $500? Do I want to charge $5,000? Do I want to work on low ticket? Do I want to work on high ticket? Do I want to meet people through Facebook? Do I want to meet people in person? Do I want to do email marketing? Do I not want to do email marketing? Do I want to do it every week? Do I want to do it every day? My goodness. Okay. One of the biggest things that's helped me be more successful than the average bear is simply making decisions. Now, I'm not necessarily right about the decision that I make. There have been plenty of decisions that I've made that were not necessarily optimized, or they weren't necessarily going to be the thing that, shot us off like a rocket ship of growth. But the very fact I'm willing to make a decision allows me to operate with a level of conviction about what it is that I'm doing. So then I get to rally people to support me. I get to be focused in my consumption of like the books, the courses, the programs, the things that I'm going to do to actually activate that thing. And even if I am wildly freaking wrong, okay, the fact that I made a decision allows me to make a new decision. So I'll give you a perfect example from my own journey as a coach. I made a decision to make my business work through setting appointments through a Facebook group, spending a lot of money on agencies, spending a lot of money on team members, spending a lot of money on AI before AI was cool. Like I was doing all kinds of stuff to make this one method work. And what I realized was that actually content and mastery of content is is a bigger factor in your success than the mechanism of the Facebook group. Which is why when you work with me in the Experts Network, I tell you to do a Facebook group, not because a Facebook group is necessarily the be-all, end-all tactic, but because it actually works really quickly and you don't have to do a whole lot of setup and you can get in the game to start mastering your content a hell of a lot faster, right? So shout out number 1 in the chat if you understand that, like, making a decision, even if the decision ends up being not totally correct, it was just the best you could do with the information that you had. And by the way, Amazon, one of the biggest companies in the entire world, they're making massive investment decisions with maybe 60% of the information they need to be able to make the decision. And, you know, Jeff Bezos has talked about this several times. And I think that that's super telling. Like, people that are in a really broke mindset, a poor mindset, they tend to be looking for like radical levels of certainty. And they're like, I'm not going to move forward with a dang thing unless I know everything, every possible thing before I do the thing, because I might get hurt. And here's the truth. You're going to get hurt, right? In your life, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt. Your ego is going to get friggin' bruised. You're going to get betrayed. You're going to have like all kinds of stuff that just happens in your life. You being a worry wart about it isn't necessarily going to prevent that thing from happening. Who's tracking on a Monday? Shout out Em in the chat. And by the way, if you're here on Christmas week, love it. I love it. I'm glad you're here. Okay, let's keep going. So decision friction, the big fix. Make rules for yourself or default decisions, right? The next time you're facing, should I do like private coaching or group coaching? Flip a freaking coin. I don't care how you make the decision, but make the damn decision. And the worst thing that can happen is that you're wrong and that you need a new decision to make a new choice. Second thing, tool friction. Oh my God. So I work with a lot of small businesses and especially solopreneurs who really need to streamline their tools. So, you know, right now in the AI obsessed world we're in for expert entrepreneurship, it's all about like the new model of the new AI. And should you use Claude? Should you use GPT? Should you use Gemini? Should you use like, and it's like introducing all these questions about what's the actual best one. And in a given moment, one of those models is going to pull ahead as being the best for a particular application. And then, you know, literally 24 hours later, you're going to see another headline that says that another tool is even better. And for solo entrepreneurs and for small business entrepreneurs, you need Google Workplace to write your shit down. Okay. You need to be able to do math. You need to be able to document. You need to be able to present. The end. Google Workplace. Done. Right. And if you're a Microsoft user, fine, go for it. Right. But you just need a tool. You need a CRM. So we use Plaza Plus. I'll drop it in the chat if you want to check out that tool. It's our white label of Go High Level. We love it because it's all your tools in one. It's got all your contact management, all your automation, all your scheduling, all your landing pages, your website, payment processing, like everything in one tool. So if you can keep things really tight, then it means that you're, one, not paying so many different subscriptions. Two, you're not having to have different lists synced up with each other through integration tools and like adding all this cost to your system versus just having like one really good one. So pick one primary tool per function in your business and then just get rid of the rest. Just don't even bother with the rest. Okay. And this is like a big one because people feel like committed to the decision that they made in the past. And I used to spend like $10,000 a month in software. Not anymore. Right. But I used to spend $10,000 a month in software because I had 3 different CRMs. I had a different tool for hosting my courses versus like doing my courses. And I just had like tools on tools on tools on tools. And it was just crazy expensive. So shout out number 2, if you heard me loud and clear, you got to get rid of the tool friction. You got to keep it really simple, right? Just pick your favorite and run with it. Third one, role friction. So role friction is really interesting, especially if you're a solopreneur, because you get to live so many different roles. I'm saying roles, not rules. So like you are a coach, for example, but you're also a marketer. You're also a salesperson. You're also the CEO. You're also probably a peer and a colleague to other coaches. You are also probably your graphic designer, copywriter, right? You're playing all these different roles, and technician. We were just talking about automation and tools. You're data scientist. You're all these different things. And I think that that's what makes solopreneurship so challenging, is because sometimes you need to not be the coach for a second so that you can get your finances in order. Sometimes you got to not be the coach for a second so that you can actually build a marketing engine that brings you lots of clients, so that you're not freaking out every month that you're not operating at your highest capacity. Sometimes you got to stop being a coach for a second and actually just get back to, like, who are you? The human behind this machine, the human that's requiring yourself to do all of these different roles in the first friggin' place. You know what I'm, right? So shout out me in the chat if you're like, yeah, there's a me in all of this too. It's not just about service. It's not just about, doing things the right way. It's also doing things in an aligned way, right? So that role friction, it's just not clear, like, who has to do what. And so the main thing here is to name your outcomes. Name your outcomes. So as a high performance coach, I'm constantly coaching towards clarity. What is the outcome? Well, the outcome is I'm going to have a weekly live show for the rest of 2026. And I'm going to have really awesome topics that are super relevant to my dream client. And so then, like, ask yourself, like, who's really going to own that? And it's like, oh, I must, because I'm the one that's behind the business. You know what I mean? Right. And that's one of the perks of making the money, Debbie, is you actually can hire out some of those roles. But I think a lot of solopreneurs are hiring a little too soon, or they're hiring a little too big. So for example, we have a virtual assistants team that we share with some of our clients for, a few hours a week, because they don't need a full-time person. Right. And rather than paying for a full-time person, they can do a fractional assistant. And it just kind of takes some of the repetitious, sucky stuff like scheduling and automating and things like that just off their plate, Yeah. So role friction. So that's number 3. Shout out 3 in the chat if you heard that. The second drag is actually expectation friction. So the expectation friction is when you have unspoken expectations by your clients or by, the people around you. So for me, like, this showed up in my first year or so when my husband and I were, like, really out of alignment about how much money I should be making by when, and how much it was going to cost to get to a place where I could make that much money by then. So I had to work pretty hard on learning how to set proper expectations and not have these unspoken assumptions. And so my fix for expectation friction is very simple. Write it once, say it twice. Write it once, say it twice. And document things very visibly. So like, I like to joke I'm a dreamer with a spreadsheet. Like, if I have a spreadsheet that talks about what the inflows and the outflows of cash are and the impact of the decisions that I'm making, and I bring that spreadsheet to a conversation with my husband, it goes so much better because it's visual, right? Now, I don't just flip him the spreadsheet and hope, pray for the best. I talk about the fact there is a spreadsheet and there's a conclusion I'm drawing from this spreadsheet. And I'll even sit down and walk through it with him to make sure that he's really understanding every assumption. No matter how well I label stuff, by the way, he still sometimes makes leaps that are like not great. So, but I do the same thing with my clients. I'll draw pictures, I'll draw diagrams, and it's the same thing. A lot of us, I think this is a bit of a broke mindset thing too, is the belief that you should just say something once and that's good enough. Master communicators understand that they need to have multiple formats. They need to have patience. They need to understand that the listener has their own belief system. So they're checking everything that you're saying against their belief system. And also, P.S., we all have wandering minds. I heard from a scientist recently that during conversation, our minds wander about 25% of the time. Wild, right? So if I've been talking for 20 minutes, you missed 5, right? You missed 5 minutes. Even if I'm like super engaged, if I'm looking at the camera, I'm saying all the right things, you still missed like 5 minutes of what I said. And maybe that was like the most vital 5 minutes that you needed to hear, Yeah, exactly. So why do I say some of the same things over and over and over again every single week? Well, because you might not have heard it, right? You could have had 4 weeks in a row where I said a thing and you spaced for that 5 minutes where I said that thing. And then the fifth week I say the thing and you finally heard it and you're like, wow, that's new. Right. And that's just how people are. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Replays are necessary. It's a super important piece of this. So expectation friction. This is also super important when you're doing coaching programs. So when I first was selling coaching programs, I would be like, okay, you're in, and then they'd pay, and then I'd wait for the next meeting and there'd be no communication at all. And what I realized is that by recording just an onboarding video, by having some onboarding emails that come out alongside the program, by having an orientation call as you're starting the program, it actually really improved not just the retention of my clients, but also the outcomes that they received because they felt actually taken care of. But what am I doing there? Setting expectations repeatedly, right? With kindness and candor, right? So, and a bit of levity too, like I don't think that you being clear about your expectations has to come across as being like draconian or rude or strict or anything like that, but there darn well better be some repetition. Yeah. So there you go. Expectation friction. Okay. Last one, energy friction. Okay. This one's so super huge. I can't tell you how many of my clients are complaining that they're trying to do high focus work in low energy times. So like one of the things that I did that really changed my life for the better was shifting to being an early bird. I used to be a night owl. I used to stay up super late and I was on a mission to empty my inbox. But the trouble with that is that I was prone to making mistakes. I couldn't think as quickly because I was so tired from an exhausting day before. And so I did an experiment and I was like, can I switch from being a night owl to an early bird? And it took me about 2 weeks and it was hard, but those 2 weeks occurred like, I don't know, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, something like that. So 2 weeks of suffering for 11 years of improved productivity, where when I start my day, my brain is fresh. I haven't been, clawed at for the entire day from my kids and my business and my clients and all of that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. So waking up early and getting after the day made a huge difference to my energy because I was doing high energy things when I had a lot of energy as opposed to low energy things. And this very show, by the way, I've done weekly lives for years and years and years, but I used to do them like Tuesday late afternoon sort of deal. And my word, my energy in those were not as good because it was a high energy thing. And I'd already been two days into the work week and it was late in the day. So I'd already had a lot of client meetings and I felt like I was rushing and it was just like, so energy friction. So generally I would say that it's a great move to match your task type to your energy level, not just your calendar availability. There's nothing on your calendar that you didn't put there. I'm going to say that again. There's nothing on your calendar that you didn't put there. But Amanda, I've got to drop my kids off at this particular time. I'm like, yeah, well, you decided to do that. I'm not saying it's not important to you. I'm not saying it's not a good thing to do. I'm just saying it's still you. Like you're still deciding to run your life the way that you run it. And the day that you realize that there's just not a lot of things that have to be where they are on your calendar, that you can move them and you can make it match your energy load. So, by the way, I've had radical calendar changes over the past several years. And in general, 2 weeks. Right? 2 weeks, I'll honor my commitments that I have on my calendar right now. And then within 2 weeks, I'll be able to operate under a new schedule. Right? So, and that's without disappointing anybody. Food for thought. So why not just ignore these efficiencies? Why not just ignore the drag? Well, the thing is that not fixing the problem costs you way more energy than actually fixing them. So like I said, with becoming an early bird, for example, I became an early bird after about 2 weeks of focus, and I've been benefiting from it ever since, 11 years. Right? So that's one way that you can kind of think of it. Another way is like just tiny annoyances tend to create these energy leaks. So for example, in the earlier years of my business, I had a less powerful computer. And so then I was endlessly waiting for downloads and uploads. And like, if I wanted to do video, it was just like terrible, absolutely terrible. And a few years ago, I said, you know what? I'm going to do the topped out MacBook Pro laptop as a standard. Well, here's what happened. I'm no longer dragged by things like video production, uploads, and downloads. I also have the ability to like work without being plugged into a wall for hours. You know, like there's so many things that are just so much easier and better because I kicked for the more expensive hardware. You know, those energy leaks, man, they kill you. They kill you. Your brain tends to spend the energy resolving the same problem over and over again. Like, this breaks my heart, and I'm saying it out loud because I'm hoping that somebody hears this and they realize, like, okay. But the number of people that have come through my programs with the same problem week after week after week after week after week after week, this is not judgment. I'm just saying that their brain is burning energy, resolving, but never quite solving the same problem over and over and over again. And what I notice is like when people do this, they get so frustrated. They make it about their identity. They globalize the problem. They tend to get really, catastrophic in their thinking. And it's hard to watch, right? Because it's really hard to watch. It's really hard to watch. And I think if you don't fix the friction, it keeps on forcing you into the same pattern of thinking, the same conversations over and over again. And then you have the same frustrations over and over again. And it's a real drag. I think the thing is that you're not just losing time on all of this. You're also experiencing like really negative emotions. And, after studying positive psychology, like the science is pretty conclusive here that when you are in a positive mindset, you're far more productive. You make better decisions. You assess risk better. There's a lot of reasons to take care of your emotions. And if you're negative, neutral, or stressed, you can think of it that as like being really a big drag. So that's not to say you should never feel sad. That's not to say that you should never, you should deny your feelings. That's actually completely opposite to what you should probably do. But if you're living in those feelings because you're staying in that spiral, like it's not just the time drag, it's emotional drag. The thing is that a 30-minute fix can save hours of future resistance downstream. So for example, on these very lives, I was in the habit of coming up with a topic on the morning, and they worked pretty good. I mean, I did have some pretty awesome topics. And then ChatGPT comes along and it made it a little easier because I could just ask every week, like, what topic should I do? But then I realized, I was like, you know what? If I can actually just come up with 16 of these topics in a row, I sit down 4 times a year to write my lives and I just show up and do them. Doesn't that sound easier? Shout a Y in the chat if you're like, wow, that does sound so much easier. Now, did it take a couple of hours to come up with the topics and make sure I had everything I needed? Yes, it did. But then it just saved me so much time in the subsequent 16 weeks. And I think like the biggest reason why not fixing that is causing problems is that your ignored friction quietly trains your business to be harder than necessary. What you tolerate ends up becoming your operating standard. And that's how businesses stay stuck at the same level of revenue for years at a time because they're not allowing the growth. So how do we fix it? The first thing is you've got to do an inventory. So a lot of times people are trying to fix a problem and they don't have the clarity on the problem, so they can't fix the problem. So step 1 is to gain the clarity. I call this brain barf, just like everything you can think of that you feel like you're supposed to do, should have done, could have done, would have done, planned to done, all the things. Just like write it down. This might take you 45 minutes to just like write everything down. But the first thing is that you got to write them down so that you can first eliminate things that you're just like, you know what? I don't have the capacity, the resources, nor the desire to sustain this. Right? Like I'm doing this from a should place, not because I really should, but just because I thought I should, and the more I think about it, the more I realize this doesn't go on the list. So once I like to do a quick call before I really get started with this next part, which is to rate your tasks on a scale of 1 to 10 on the effort versus return. So if it's high effort and low return, then you need to get rid of it. You need to eliminate it. If it's low effort, high return, you need to prioritize it. It needs to be something that you're going to really do. Look for tasks that feel really heavy compared to the results that you get from it. Start with the easiest simplification, not the biggest one, right? So there might be like a big marketing system that you want to put into your business to make your life a lot easier. Chunk it down to something way smaller and be successful with the smaller chunk, right? So that's what I'm saying. Ask, like, what would make this 10 times easier? What would make this 10 times easier? So like when I was designing 16 weeks of live streams, like my thought was, I just want to start. Like, I just want to come to work on Monday morning and just start. And I don't want to feel like I have to get up super early on Monday mornings to be ready to start. I just want to start. And so that's why I ended up writing 16 in advance. Now, the key thing with this exercise is to repeat it, right? Every month you should be downloading all the things that you want to do and eliminating the things that don't work and doubling down on the things that do. All right, so let me take us home here. Keep in mind that looking for ease is actually a good thing, right? So people say like there's no silver bullet. I'm one of those people. There is no silver bullet, but it also doesn't have to be hard automatically. You know, like the job is to look for ease. The job is to look for leverage. So leverage is like, imagine you've got a lever, you've got a fulcrum, right? And if you apply a little bit of pressure, you get a whole lot of force out the other side. That's what leverage is. With a coaching business in modern times, having content that is speaking to your genius is super important. Building a reputation around your genius, super important. And so that's a high leverage activity, because the more people who hear about your perspectives and they can apply it and they can get a win, the better. So ease is not laziness, it's actually leverage. It means less resistance, not less responsibility. In fact, I would say you're taking more responsibility by actually evaluating the data of your business and making better decisions. Shout a Y in the chat if you agree with me there. Leverage multiplies results without multiplying your effort. And that's how you grow. Ease creates consistency, and consistency creates growth, right? If it's too hard to execute, you won't execute it and you can't grow. So that's why I think looking for a little bit of ease can go a long way. Now, remember, hard work is still required, but what if you were applying hard work to things that are going to work hard for you, right? That's what actually gets you to move forward. The best leaders, they tend to design for flow and for sustainability, not through brute force. And most people, they don't take the time to actually think about the flow. All right, my friends, thank you for joining me this week for the live stream. We're going to have this broadcast saved inside of our Clients Over Chaos community, which you can join at next5clients.com. Tell your friends about Next 5 Clients. We are going to be back next week with our next episode. It's going to be all about the hidden habits around your momentum. By the way, if you're seeing this today and you have not joined us for the planning extravaganza, make sure that you register at extravaganza.thecoachesplaza.com. Again, tell your friends. We've got some really incredible speakers coming. It's going to be pretty awesome. Yeah, exactly. And Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. Hope this was super helpful. I hope in your downtime, you're able to really think about your flow, really think about your purpose, really think about what you want your 2026 experience to be like. And as always, I am DM away. So if you would like more support in a great system to go from inconsistency to consistent client flow, then make sure you DM me the word expert, and I will talk to you about our expert program that helps people with setting up systems that don't suck. All right, my friend, thank you so much for being here, and we will see you again the next time.